Hey, everybody. Welcome to Live Well. Sister, come on in the room and let me know that you're here for this wonderful conversation that I am super excited about. I love all of my guests, but I have to be honest, the one tonight is one that I have been following for a while. So it is indeed a extra special pleasure for me to be able to talk to tonight's guest. So as you come on in the room, please let us know where you're joining us from. And if this is your first time joining us for Live Well Sister, let us know that as well. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Marcie L. Thomas. I am the founder of Brown Girl Collective, the BGC Book Club, where I talk to authors, and then also Live Well Sister, which is all about us finding the ways to live our best and most authentic lives. So welcome, Duran from Richmond, Virginia. Thank you for joining us. So tonight, as I've already mentioned, I'm super excited because we have an extra special guest who is making waves and has been doing so for a while, just talking about what it means to be a Black woman and be a spiritual Black woman. And so she and I have some things in common, which we'll get into here in this conversation. So I'm just so glad to have her here. So by way of introduction, our guest this evening is Candice Marie Benbow, who is a theologian, essayist, columnist, baker, and educator whose work gives voice to Black women's shared experience of faith, healing, and wholeness. Named by Sojourners as one of 10 Christian women shaping the church in 2020, she has written for Essence, Glamour, The Root, Vice, Shondaland, Madame Noir, and the Me Too movement. Candice created the Eliminate Syllabus social media campaign, founded the media boutique Zion Hill Media Group, and in memory of her mother, established the Louise Marie Foundation to support HBCU nursing students and community mental health projects. A member of the Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated, Candice holds degrees from Tennessee State University, North Carolina Central University, and Duke Divinity School. She is the new daily lifestyle education and health writer at The Griot and currently calls Atlanta home. So without any further delay, welcome our very, very special guest this evening, Candice Marie Benbow.
Thank you for having me.
Oh, yes. Welcome. This is so exciting for me, as I've already mentioned. And in the green room, I'm going to call it the brown room.
Yes, the brown room.
In the brown room, we were talking about, how I've been following you for a while. And it is indeed a pleasure to have you here to discuss your book.
Thank you.
Red Lip Theology, which the subtitle is For Church Girls Who've Considered Tithing to the Beauty Supply Store When Sunday Morning Isn't Enough. Yes. So thank you. And, as I was saying before, congratulations on the new book coming out and just all the buzz and everything.
It is definitely surreal.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's been a journey to get here, and then to see the reception that people are giving it is just so beautiful. So
absolutely. We've been waiting on you, so thank you.
Thank you.
And I just wanted to say, just on a personal note, I really appreciate your book because I too have had experiences in going to seminary and all that stuff we'll talk about. So I really could relate to you and the things that you talk about in the book just from my own personal experiences. So thank you, because I felt seen. So
thank you. That means everything to me. So thank you.
Absolutely. And just as a sidebar, I had to pull it up. This is my painting of Ntozake, so she's watching over us. Ntozake Shange.
I got to meet her once.
Oh wow! Wow!
That's such a beautiful. Her and her sister.
All right.
The Black Theater Festival, and it was such a beautiful moment.
Absolutely, because your subtitle does pay homage to her, so I had to make sure she was watching.
Necessarily, so yes.
Absolutely. So tell us just a little bit. I mean, there's so much to talk about in this book, but what is it specifically that helped you to formulate your red lip theology. And for those who may not know what it is or haven't had a chance to read it yet, what exactly is red lip theology?
So, red lip theology is the ways in which I understand myself and see myself in the world as a Black millennial woman of faith, right? I am somebody who was steeped in the church as much as I was steeped in hip hop culture, and
Mhm.
that for good and for bad for both, right? And that how I see the world, and how I move as a millennial Black woman is different.
Mhm.
But also not just that, how I connect and understand faith in the world around me is also pierced through that lens. And so I one wrote this book, and come to this one. I was in seminary,
Mhm.
and my at the same time that I was in seminary, I was trying to make sense of a difficult breakup, and I was looking a mess. And my best friend made me promise that I would just get myself together. Like, she was like, "You can't be out here looking like this. It's like you
Mhm.
gotta do something." And so she made me promise to make my face every day,
Mhm.
put on clothes and be intentional. And um, it was rooted in one, a love for me, but also the ways that when we put on makeup, when we put on
Mhm.
a look, like your mood changes, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And so I was doing that, honoring a promise that I made to my best friend, while also um, while also engaged in theological education and exploration. And so the two go hand in hand to me, um,
Mhm.
for that reason alone. And when we get to a point of writing the book, I really wanted women to be able to have a conversation about faith that
Mhm.
did not context cishet Black men. Like, I wanted a conversation that was centered around us, grounded by us, and we can flourish in. Like, if they listen, they're interlopers, but there's no room for them, right? We're not requesting that they speak. Um,
Right.
so
They speak quite enough.
all the time, too much, right? And so that was where it came from for me. And I'm really I'm really grateful. I mean, it's been in the world since Tuesday, but I'm
Mhm.
really grateful for the response, because I think that one, folks got it, and then they recognize what I was trying to do, and that's
Right.
always the scary part. Like, it worked well in my head, but I don't know if it
Right. Makes sense to me, right?
made sense to me. And I mean, my editor one line when she said it made sense to her too.
Mhm.
So yeah, that is how we get to red lip theology.
All right. Well, for those, we've got some wonderful comments here on Sonia saying this book is amazing. I'm trying to get that up. We can see it. Taking her time. And in chapter 4, Side Chick. Yes, that was a good chapter for
That
sure.
was whew,
Um,
that's goodness.
and then we have another comment. Erica saying it was a beautiful way to open the book too, witnessing the sisterhood you had around you.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I
All
mean,
right. Now, you're really gonna like this. Is looks like one of your homies. May Winston Salem be painted with red lips in
yes,
celebration.
Courtney.
Yeah.
Yes. Let it be so. Let it be so. I love it.
So, before we get into any other questions, I just really, if there was anything that you would like to share, like an excerpt that people can hear, just to get a little snippet of what it's about, in
Sure.
case they haven't had a chance to read it or finish it, because it really has only been a couple of days. So,
Right. Ironically, Sonia talked about the Essayist chapter, and so I'm gonna read a selection from there.
All right.
And for
Sounds
those who
good.
don't know, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. For those who don't know,
Yes.
this is the chapter. The essay is called "Amazing Grace for Side Chicks," and it contextualizes a conversation. It grounds a conversation about grace in a very um, less than stellar moment in my life when I was engaged in a relationship with somebody else's husband. So, here we are. When Jesus told the woman's accusers to throw their rocks if they were sinless, they dropped them and walked away. When Jesus asked where her accusers had gone, it's as if he hoped those of us in similar circumstances could realize we aren't inferior to women who haven't been in affairs. They are not better than we are because their brokenness didn't lead them into the arms of another woman's husband. To tell the truth, it's quite possible a woman's brokenness is what led her to marry and stay with that man. I see this with more than a few couples who try to convince us that they are relationship goals on social media. We are all broken in some way or another. Our responsibility is to identify and heal it. It's Jesus's command to go and sin no more that reminds us we have the capacity to be better than who we have been. I've had many conversations about whether love can be sin. I don't think so. The sin Jesus asked the woman caught in adultery to abandon is whatever enabled her to believe and act differently than what she now knew to be true. That she was wonderful, that she was worthy of full, whole, and complete love. When we've healed those parts of us, we can't go back and do as we did before. It doesn't mean couples who start out as cheating partners can't make it. It does, however, mean real truth telling and the work to repair what has been destroyed has to happen in order to reset the relationship on a solid foundation. I'm happy to say that I have my feminist card back. In public and in private, I live into my allegiance to women and the world I want to see. I want a world where women are not stoned, literally and figuratively, for our mistakes. I also want a world where women don't experience the pain that leads to certain mistakes. I can't stop all the pain, but I can do my part. The idea that we can do these things and have the capacity to change is the grace of God. We've spent our entire lives thanking God for it, for giving us the very thing we can never earn and do not deserve. If given the chance to receive grace or reaping what I have sown, I'll take grace every time. Grace doesn't blind us to who we have been or shield us from taking accountability for the pain we cause, but it provides us with second, third, fourth, and hundredth chances to become better people. Grace comes with a reminder God didn't leave us where God found us, but extended the opportunity to learn and unlearn behaviors for a better next time. Grace empowered me to confront what I'd intentionally ignored. Grace shows up in all of us, asking the hard questions to break new ground.
Amen. 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 Thank you for sharing that
Thank
piece,
you.
because I mean it is something that, we live in a world where if a woman does a thing,
Again,
a
mhm,
thing, whatever that thing is that goes outside of what is thought to be acceptable, there are people going to want to throw stones and rocks and
right,
call you
right.
all, all out of your name, all kinds of things. But just to understand that there is grace and that God gives grace,
Yeah,
and that for every person who may, judge you or I or anyone who finds himself in certain situations, there are things that they're dealing with that maybe we don't know.
I mean, and I think that was why it was really important that I sat with that moment, right? Where Jesus is like, he who is without sin, you know,
Mhm.
all right, y'all want to stone her, but look at your life. And
Right.
I think the more and it's hard.
Yeah.
It's something I actively have to do, and I don't get it every time. But the more we sit with our stuff, and the
Mhm.
fact that we have stuff, I think that it does create the space for us to be gracious when other people are walking through their stuff.
Absolutely.
And I mean, and yeah, I got mine, and I hope that people are gracious with me with mine. So I've got to extend that same level of grace to other people.
Absolutely. And Sonia saying, I'm so glad you were transparent and told your
Thank
truth.
you, Sonia.
Yes, yes. I mean that's just important because I think that that's part of the issue is that we aren't honest.
Mhm.
I mean, we as a whole, we're not
Right.
always honest about the things that we deal with or go through, and then because we are afraid of what are people going to say, what are people going to think,
Mhm.
about what is this thing that I'm doing or have done or find situation
Right.
that I find myself in. And I'm going to kind of segue just a little bit since we're on the subject, because obviously an affair requires sex.
Yes.
Sometimes it can be emotional, but
It can be. This
it
one was
can
not.
be. Yeah, yeah. It usually starts that way. But
Right.
just in the book, you also really talk about sexuality and your being a sexual being as a Christian woman, and
Right.
how. Well, I'm not going to talk for you. I'm just going to let you speak a little bit on that because that is a big issue for a lot of us, especially if we are unmarried Christian women.
Right. I think too often scripture does not um I think too often we insert our interpretation of how we think people should live based off of and then apply scripture to it, right?
Right.
But when you look at, I tell people all the time, like when you look contextually at scripture, there were a lot of different kinds of relationships, right? Everyone was not married. And if you recognize that, then there is a larger conversation to be had about what it means for pleasure to be essential to a thriving life.
Mhm.
um, and for touch and intimacy to also be essential. And this notion that I have to be deprived of the very things that are needed in order for me to thrive is absolutely ridiculous. It's and I had to really sit and have a conversation and be like, look, so much of what I know to be so much about what I know about sex, I learned at church, and that was the worst place to learn it, right? A lot of
Mm,
learned about sex at church, and it was don't
right,
do it, don't do it, don't do it until we got
right.
married, and then it was like just do it as much as your husband wants you to, right? And so
Mm,
it
wow.
becomes it becomes a very slippery slope to what it means to have ownership of your own body, to
Right.
know what is enjoyable for you, and to also be somebody who is a spiritual being connected to all forms of God and good. Now, like I say in the book, that doesn't mean that every woman um who has a much more progressive sexual ethic is sleeping with everybody that thinks she cute or sleeping with
Absolutely not.
everybody, that wants her. What it does mean though is that you have a commitment to honoring your body, to honoring who you are, honoring the care that of what is intentional in your to your life, right? So
Right.
like I knew that sex, and it's not necessarily the sex that was the sin, but the intention. When I was trying to have sex with a guy because I wanted him to stay, or
Mm,
because I wanted him to be more into me, that was the problem, because
right.
it wasn't rooted in a mutual respect or care for each other, but it was rooted in deficiency. And
Mm-hmm.
I think that's what I want women to take away from just that part, is like, give yourself permission, one, to explore, and two, give yourself permission to really look at your sex life from a space of wholeness. Are you engaged in it in ways that affirm your highest good? Great. But are you engaged in it in ways that's making you lean into the worst and weakened parts of you? Then that's a different conversation.
Absolutely, absolutely. Because I actually, and she's probably watching, I actually talked to my mom about this earlier today. Yes, yes, yes. We talk about a lot of things. So, but we were just, saying that, of course, her being an older person, that,
Mhm.
and I'm older than you. I'm not ashamed of my age. I am 55, and my
Okay
mother's
then.
in her 70s, late
Yes.
70s. And of
Mhm.
course, so things are different. So things that she was taught or made
Yep.
to believe
Mhm.
about that aspect of her life, things
Mhm.
that maybe some of it got passed on to me,
Right.
that
Right.
it's just a totally different idea or a mindset of what that means. Is that if you are a woman who chooses to have a healthy sex life, that there is a guilt attached to that,
Right. Yeah.
or a shame
Yeah.
attached to that because of things that are coming at you from outside. But the reality of it is nobody should know what's going on in your business. That's your business
That's your business.
anyway.
That's your bedroom. That's your business. That's your house. Like,
Exactly.
that's
It's
that's
your
your
business.
phone, right? That's your computer. Like,
Right,
we
exactly. I mean, you're an adult, and as long as it's
exactly.
consenting adults doing what consenting adults choose to do, ultimately, it's your business. And it's not oh, I'm worried about your soul. I'm like, really? Worry about your own.
It's never, and here's the thing, it's never about worrying about our souls. It's always been a power play. And so, I think that you said it just now, just the best, about the ways that those actions can root guilt and shame. And the truth of the matter is that almost everything that women do that does not align with what society says we should be is rooted in guilt and shame. And we're always the goalpost is always moving, right? So it's like, yeah, she is still a virgin, but she focuses too much on her career. And those degrees ain't gonna keep her warm at night. You
Oh
know what I'm
Lord.
saying? So it's like it continues to be that, as that there what will it take, right, to get
Mhm.
you to a place where you feel broken, and you need the shame and the guilt that now produces you to feel like you got to work more to be valuable, work more to be seen as good, right?
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
so, yeah, for some it's sex, but the truth of the matter is, it's anything that we do as women that empowers the goodness, the light of who we are.
Mhm. Absolutely, absolutely. Whether it be, as you said, pursuing a career, or, deciding not to get married at a certain age so that you can, live your life or buy a home, or,
Right.
whatever it is. I can remember years ago talking to an older lady in the church that I was at, that I attended, that she was like, I was thinking about, buying a home. She's like, oh, you should wait till you get married and, get your home with
Mhm.
your husband. I'm like, really?
Right.
What if I never get a husband? So that means home ownership is.
Or you can be. What's funny is that some of them, the older you get, and they want you to have babies, then they just
Mm,
stop caring, and they just like, girl, just go find the man, go find.
right, right,
It's
right,
like, wait a
right,
minute. This whole time you've been telling me to wait on my husband. No, just have a baby. You're running out of time.
right,
So
right,
again,
right.
like, it moves every. So when you realize it, then you might as well just be free.
Right.
You might as well live into the truth of who you are
Absolutely.
and disregard what everybody else says about it. You may as well be free.
Absolutely. And you hit the nail on the head. Just be free. So y'all out there who not free, be free, girl.
Get free.
Just be free.
Get free.
Right. Because you're right about the thing with the babies. Now, I was much younger at the time, but I had someone tell me, oh, you're selfish because you don't have children. And I'm like, but I'm single and I'm in church. So if I
Right.
came in here pregnant, then you'd have something to say
They
about
have
that.
something to say. Exactly.
So,
Exactly.
right. And well, let's talk about that because that was your experience growing up that you had. Your mother had you and she was not married when she had you. And there were at different periods of your life where that became a topic of discussion, unfortunately.
Yeah, I I struggled with believing that I had somehow tainted my mother. I struggled with believing that somehow I had made her less good. Because everybody preaches about single mamas. Like they are the stain on this like beautiful, pure moral blanket. And I grew up in this context where I kept hearing these sermons that basically told me like if your mama just loved God more, you wouldn't be here.
Mm,
And that
wow.
does something to you, right? Like I remember I used to hate the scripture when and I talk about it in the book where David says he was born in sin and shaped in iniquity because I felt like that was only really applied to kids who had birth circumstances like I did. Like,
Mm,
I mean, there are still some churches that won't baptize a child whose parents are not married.
mhm,
And,
mhm.
as someone who, is born and raised Baptist and not only that, they won't do baby dedication.
Right.
And
Yeah.
I'm like, you're sitting here and you're gonna tell me that you will not welcome this child into the family of God because of birth circumstances that had absolutely nothing to do with them.
Right.
It just was and is ridiculous.
It
and
really is. It
um,
really is.
and it roots again shame. And I think too often now because my mom is gone, of the ways that feeling like I shamed her, I was her shame, robbed me of so many opportunities to make a different kind of memory with her in that moment.
Mhm.
Um,
Wow.
and here's the truth: we had an amazing relationship, and yet, my hope is that there will be sisters, brothers, kin who read that and take my words and be like, no, like release yourself of
Right.
whatever guilt you have and shame you have around your circumstances and release whatever expectation you had of your parents, right? Like cuz
Mhm.
and and begin to see yourself as God sees you and develop so that you can have different kinds of memories. Because one of the things, and I'll end here, I have gotten so many DMs in these last 2 days of sisters, particularly from that part, telling me like, I did not realize how much I feel guilty about not having a dad in my life, right?
Mm.
Guilty about being a product of a single parent home, how much I resent that, how much I felt like I had to work even harder to prove myself. And I'm like, and all of that don't have nothing to do with us. And yet
Right.
we internalized it. And now we're overworking ourselves. We're under appreciating ourselves just because our parents fell in love and had us before rings were put on fingers. And
Mm.
sometimes the ring never got, in my mama's case, never got on their finger. But
Right.
does it matter more that she was a single mother or does it matter that she was a good mother?
Mm.
And I think that that's what we gotta continue to push that way.
Absolutely. I would agree wholeheartedly. And I mean, it's the thing to me that's always, once again, about all of these things that don't make sense, because especially in our community, there are more children that are born outside of marriage than there are within. And Black people, by and large, tend to be in church more. So obviously, somebody is doing something in
Before
spite
or
of,
after service. Somebody
right. Some maybe during, you never know.
hello. Especially now that we're virtual.
So, I mean, I think that we have these strong ideals that many weren't even our ideals. They're things that were put on us.
Yeah.
Not necessarily, what the way that we normally would do things anyway if we weren't living in someone else's culture.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think part of what grounds why I wrote this book is what would my faith have looked like if I got to live it free from the beginning? And so I hope, right, that like there are some other folks that as younger sisters read it who are going on a journey, as we are trying to push for a different kind of world, that they can get free from the beginning. And we've got to, I think, this goes back to even what, science said about, and you said about honesty and transparency and being vulnerable. We got to tell the truth. Because if we don't tell the truth, then nobody gets free that way, right? Like nobody, there were some very painful chapters that I had. I mean, Amazing Grace for Shy Chicks weren't easy to write.
Right.
And a lot of my friends, they got to read drafts of it and they were like, like, whew, you sure? And I went back and forth with it for a while. But for me, I said, whether it's on January the 18th, 2022 or January 18th, 2050, there's going to be a sister who reads that book that's in a similar situation or has just gotten out of it and was as bewildered and broken as I was. And the only way that she's going to know that it's possible to move forward is if she's given the space to see that somebody moved forward and that they're honest about that. I think the beauty of Black womanhood, sisterhood in particular, is that we get to tell the truth to each other. Like, I think that's the beauty. That's the difference between acquaintances. That's the difference between certain levels of friendship. But like when you my sister, like I get to say, like, girl, it was a mess and you a mess. And I get to figure out, and we get to figure out what that means going forward for the life of flourishing that we want. So for me, every Black woman that read that book read it with the intention of freedom and liberation on their mind is my sister.
Absolutely.
And so I wanted my sister to know what her sister had gone through to get to where she is.
Absolutely. And that also brings up the subject that you talk about, just being the sisterhood of being a woman in church, but like specifically women in ministry. And how that all shakes out, because of course you're coming in a younger generation with your ideas and ideals, and some of which are different from what you have traditionally been taught. Right. And then dealing with, or working with, or trying to be mentored by, seeking mentorship from elder women who are in the church. So you do speak about that sisterhood specifically in the book.
Yeah. It matters so much, because I think what becomes the danger is when we don't give each generation room to be the kind of generation that they are created and supposed to be, right? Like, we're not supposed to be carbon copies of the ones that came before us, right? Now that doesn't mean that you can't guide and like, like I don't need to touch the stove to know it's gonna burn my hand. Like you get to tell me, and you should tell me it's
Right.
hot, move back, right? Um, but I do think that it matters to sit with how we can shape generations, shape trajectories through sisterhood, right? That it doesn't have to be this like top down mentor mentee relationship, but I can learn something from you just as you can learn something from me, and
Absolutely.
I give you room to be yourself.
Yeah.
And I had to be very honest that sometimes I didn't run into those kinds of mentors.
Mm,
I didn't run into those kind of elders.
mm,
And and I want to be one of those kind of mentors and elders. And
right.
and I want to have those kind of mentors and elders because
Mm,
I'm not above still making mistakes, and I can learn something too. So I think
mhm,
that we're in a really interesting moment regarding Black womanhood. I think that my generation and Gen Zers and younger sisters are really pushing envelopes and what it means to like speak for themselves, to speak
mhm.
against powers, to speak against principalities in ways that other generations have not done before.
Absolutely.
I was telling a younger group of seminarians the other day, I was like, it's gonna come a day where a sister's gonna read my book and be like, Lip Theology don't go far enough. Like,
Mm,
looking forward to that day. Like,
absolutely.
I'm not the stopping point, right? Like,
Mhm,
so we gotta make room for the ones who are here and the ones who are coming behind us. And I'm grateful for the ways that I've seen that modeled, and I want to continue to find ways to model it.
absolutely. Guess got a couple comments here. One from Priscilla. It's time for women to feel good, safe, and voice their thoughts, feeling good in our own skin.
Miss
Thank you for
Priscilla,
helping us
she
to
has
get the
known me.
conversation.
Miss Priscilla has known me since I was a baby. So to
Oh,
see
wow.
here,
Welcome,
like, and
Miss
so she know my mama.
Oh,
She was
wow.
she was my Girl
Wow.
Scout leader for like years. So this like
Wow.
that just made me so happy.
This is one of my friends, Tiffany, Dr. Tiffany Montfort Dent. She just got
Hi.
home today. She's going to put on her red lipstick and take a pic tomorrow. All
And
right.
tag me. Tag
Yes,
me.
yes, yes. Daria is saying, I would love to attend seminary. However, I come from a traditional Black church going family. My parents aren't supportive of my progressive ideas. I want their support so badly. Any tips? Good question.
Good question. So here's the thing. If you want to go to seminary, go to seminary. It is, especially if you, I think that it is one of it's, and I say it in the book, it's not, my friend told me one time, it's not enough to answer the call, but we've got to be faithful to the call, and being faithful
Mhm,
to the call includes study, right? And
mhm,
so go to seminary. What you will find is that the majority of us who are
mhm,
in seminary, who may often think differently than folks in our families. Um, and there's already an assumption that seminary makes you less saved. Like
mhm.
the joke, most folks call seminary the cemetery because they feel that's where faith goes to die.
Oh, wow. Wow.
So
Never heard that.
yeah, they call it the cemetery. And so you will not be in you will not be isolated in that kind of experience. What I can say is something that continued for me and has continued for me is that I had to be very honest about what is true for me, right? That like I love God. I know God knows me and loves me and God guides my life. I may think differently about certain theological principles, but that doesn't mean I've completely and totally walked away from the faith, right?
Right. Right.
Um, I will never forget. It was second year of my seminary of my MDiv program, and we were about to take our Christian theology exam, and for everybody knew that that exam was a doozy. Like that exam was just whew. And I was up at 2 o'clock in the morning, and I was trying to memorize atonement theory,
Mm-hmm.
soteria. I was trying to cram all this stuff in to make sure I had it for the next day for the exam. And I remember I put everything down and I said a prayer and I said, God, you were God to me when I was at Zion Hill, and you the same God to me when I'm getting ready to go in here and take this exam.
Mm-hmm.
And let me remember that you have always been with me, even as I'm shifting in how I think. And I
Mm-hmm.
went in there, I got my bead, and we rocked out with my bead, right? So I said all that to say that you have to honor where you're being led, and you have to honor where you're being called. And if their support is paramount to that, then and it may be restrictive and impossible to get, then the prayer becomes, as it was with my mom, the prayer for you then becomes, God, even if they don't understand it, help
Mm-hmm.
them to see that this is what you called me to do.
Absolutely.
And that's because that's it. Because at the end of the day, there's no bigger power than that to help change and shift minds. And so let that be the prayer that like even if they don't understand it, let them see you in what I'm doing and support me in that way.
Absolutely. And I mentioned earlier on that I actually attended seminary, Ashland Theological Seminary. I did not finish though.
I know a lot of people from Ashland.
Yes, I did not finish, but for me, it was more number one, the experience was one that allowed me to just really expand my horizons, spiritually and just learn things because unlike you, I did not grow up in the church. We would go every now and again, but it wasn't a thing where I grew up in the church. And later on in life, I found my way into a church, and there's a part of me that's always been a leader. And
Right.
so, then here comes the leadership. Here comes the things, you're doing more and more. And I just had a desire to learn more and to grow and to understand God. But I would agree. I wouldn't say necessary cemetery, but it but it definitely
Yeah.
changed my way of thinking because someone here said, Sonia says it helps you develop relationships with unique people that love God and are trying to figure it out. That part is so true.
Absolutely. Like my conversation partners are still my seminary classmates.
Mm-hmm.
They call me to talk through sermons. I call them to talk through, my theological framework.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and it is a very important um it's very important to know that you
Mm,
have sojourners, right?
mm,
Like because the other piece is that like faith can, and that's why I wrote, read Lip Theology, is because faith journeys can feel so isolating. Like
mhm,
it can feel like you are because of how we were raised, it can feel like you are the only one that has these questions. You are
mm,
the only one going through these experiences. You're the only one feeling this level of uncomfort because we can't articulate it, right?
mm.
Like we can't, because then it's like, okay, so why you got these questions? Why
Right.
are you going through those things? Why do you have that level of uncomfort? And we can't be honest
Mhm.
about what we're feeling and what we're thinking. And so then we get in these silos and we think because nobody else is feeling this way or thinking this way, then what I'm feeling and thinking must be wrong.
Right.
Um,
Absolutely.
And then you go to seminary, you go
Mm-hmm.
to divinity school, and you're in class, and you like, oh snap, like they think the same thing I do, or
Mm-hmm.
or they're asking the same kind of questions I am, and you're in a space where people are committed to the work of souls, whether it is in the pulpit or whether it's like me writing as a theologian and thinking through, theological concepts. Like it is the space that you live into, that you gives you so much clarity about your call, gives you so much connection. So yeah,
Mm-hmm.
I encourage everybody that wants to go. I think every person who feels called to preach, especially if you under the age of 50, you need to be sitting in somebody's school.
Mm-hmm.
And so I hope that that was helpful.
Absolutely. Absolutely. We have another comment. Let's see. Engaging your voice has allowed me to be honest with the ways church has kept me from being free. I may never be as free as you are, but I'm so grateful that many others will live into themselves because of red
Oh,
lip theology.
thank
Absolutely.
you,
Thank
Lord.
you,
Thank you
Ms.
so
Ellen.
much.
Thank
Thank you so
you.
much. Oh, she is one of those who is somebody so everybody needs, that's on front lines, needs a champion and needs a safe
Mm,
space to go. And she has been that for me, where you get encouraged.
mm,
Because
mm,
what we often don't talk about, are the hits that you take living and working in a space of faith and feminism, right? Where
yes.
you're really trying to push for women to, not think like you, but
Right.
to champion their own story. And doing that goes against so much of what society says is possible or should be. And so those of us who do that are often bruised.
Mm-hmm.
We are often bruised and just left, you know, left battered, and you have people who will be there for you,
Mm,
and give you pockets to breathe new air. And
mm,
I've just been grateful for her, for doing that for me. I've been grateful for other sisters who do that and
mm.
reach out and be like, hey, like I'm lifting you up. I'm like, thank you, because it becomes heavy work sometimes.
Absolutely. And one of the things, just thinking back to my experience in seminary, I remember taking a class. It wasn't a womanist theory class per se, but it was a Black female pastor who was teaching. And one of the things that she said, that as a Black woman in ministry, that a lot of your hits come from other women, the women that are in the church, because they're looking at you. What did she say? That, well, this is one of the few spaces that Black men are able to succeed. So who are you to come in here and step on the toes of Black men?
Yeah. It is so, I mean, the ways that Black women can prop up patriarchy, live into sexism, live into it's just, you look at them and you really grieve for them,
Right.
because you know that is a diminished life. Um and you know that it's one that that has been told, how stunted their growth can be, right?
Mhm.
And so you look at them and you're like, bruh, like I'm out here trying to do this for you too.
Right.
Like,
Right.
I'm out here taking these hits so that you can get free too, you
Mhm.
know?
Mhm.
And so I hope that we can continue to develop relationships, one, just by the visibility of more women in leadership, more women who are clergy, more women who are writing about God and faith, more women speaking, that it becomes normalized that like, no, like Black church was not just the place for men to have dignity. It was the
Mhm.
place for all of us to have it. And
Absolutely.
it should not have ever been at the expense of women and girls.
Absolutely. Jaslyn asked the question, and she asked it a couple times, so I want to make sure I don't miss it. How do you protect, armor yourself? Let me put it up here from the male man issues coming up against your work or mission.
Um, I think that part of it is having to be very confident in who who you are, and what you've been called to do, and having people around you who can protect you from certain daggers,
Mm-hmm.
um, who can help you when you have blind spots.
Mm-hmm.
Like this isn't a kind of work that you can do without serious self-reflection and accountability. If you don't have those things, then a it's derailed before it even gets a chance to fly and start.
Mm-hmm.
And so that is to say that it isn't that those issues, those antagonisms don't bubble to the surface, because they do, but it does mean that there has to be a system of checks and balances that allows for you to be able to recognize it, um,
Mm-hmm.
process your response to it, but then also how you're gonna move forward and do the work that grounds women's experiences and their hearts. And then also taking care of your own. Like, so
Mm-hmm.
I don't read comments much, unless I know you.
Yeah.
Um, I try not, sometimes I don't do it all the time, but I try not to engage. One, because that keeps my spirit at peace.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so putting those kind of mechanisms in place really is how you build that armor.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, and just to be in a public space at all, but then when you add, when you
Right.
add, what it is that you speak of, what it is that you believe in, then yes, the people will come for you,
Yeah, they will.
even when you
Yeah.
don't stand for them. They're coming
You
for
don't stand for it. And then they get mad when you tell them about themselves. It's like,
right, right.
you would have just stayed over there, we wouldn't even be here.
Right. Because I mean, the reality of it is anything in life, politics, religion, whatever it is, people aren't always going to agree. So, what do they say? Chew the meat and spit out the fat.
Chew the meat and spit the bone. That's what you got to do.
Yeah,
That's what you got to do.
exactly. Exactly. So, let me see. I just want to make sure. One of the other things that you talk about is there was a period after your mother passed away that you weren't really involved in the church as much. You took a break,
Mhm.
and I've been through that as well, where sometimes you just need to take a break. And in that time, understanding that there are other systems of faith or spirituality that also add value
Mhm.
to, who you are as a Christian. And I know that nowadays, to be honest, the black church as we know it isn't the same. People are leaving and beginning to embrace other ideas and other thoughts. How much of that plays into where you stand now in terms of your own theology?
Oh, it's paramount. One, because I know for myself that you can experience holy, and you can experience God outside of church and outside of traditionally outside of Christianity, right? Like that there is holiness and there is God outside of that space. And as somebody who considers himself a seeker, someone who I want to always be open to the ways that spirit can meet me.
Mhm.
I don't ever want to close that off, because the moment that I close off a possible encounter with the divine, the moment that I close off a way that spirit can encounter, can engage with me, I am making a definitive statement of what I believe spirit can and cannot do. Um,
Mhm.
and I don't have that right. I don't have that right. I don't have that capacity. I don't have that kind of power, right? And so as long as I keep myself in a space and in a posture where I'm open to how God will move and how God will shift, then I stay in that flow because I wake up every day amazed. I encounter something every day that opens my heart and opens my mind. So and church is included in that, but it is not the soul space.
Mm-hmm. And just from personal experience, I find that making it the soul space can be dangerous.
It
Some people might not like hearing that, but it's true
it's
because
so true.
because you're dealing with humans who have their own stuff going on, and things show up, and you can be treated or mistreated in a certain way, and that's why you hear of church hurt. That's
Yep.
why you hear people making the decision to walk away and just throw God away, because of experiences that they've had in church. So I am with you that having a more expansive way of embracing your spirituality and your spiritual self is very, very important.
Yeah.
Now, there is one more question that I did want to ask,
Okay.
basically from Fanice. I'm letting you guys run this with me. Thank you. how how do we as mothers raise our daughters to understand the ways we were placed under scrutiny in the church is no longer required when the same scrutiny still exists
Woo!
today?
Yeah, I think part of it is that kind of honesty, right? To say like you are going to face those kinds of challenges, but they are rooted in this. They are rooted in patriarchy. They're rooted in sexism. They're rooted in a denial of yourself. But I always want you to be free, right? I always want you to honor the sound of your own familiar, even as you are shaping a relationship with God that yields your life to God, right? Like I think that like mothers today, millennial moms are in a very a unique position to do that, to be very honest about the traumas and the triggers of church for us, while also, one of my friends who she has a 12-year-old, and she said they were watching church one day. This is in the pandemic, and she said the preacher just went off on a tangent and
Mhm.
was just like just going off. And it was geared towards women. And she said you could see in the Facebook comments, folks was like, yeah, 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 yeah. She was like, I put it on mute and was like, all it is, don't pay attention to that. Everything else he said makes sense. But this, we'll talk about that later. And I
Mhm.
love that because, of course, because it's her mom, she's
Mhm.
gonna hear that differently, right?
Mhm.
And she's gonna be empowered to think differently about it. I just think mamas gotta be honest about it, and then still and give their daughters room to blossom as they're
Mhm.
blossoming. Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for that. If
Oh, we're
there's
done. Oh, it's been an hour.
It has been. I'm like, girl, we could talk a whole nother hour, but I'm not gonna do
Wow.
that to y'all. And as we mentioned earlier, we both in Atlanta, so there may be a part two. We just
We
have to
need
do
to
it.
make a part two. We
Yeah,
need
we
to
need
make
to do
a
a
part
part
two.
two. Just go somewhere and sit and have a camera and just have a
Yes,
conversation.
I like that.
But
I like
but
that.
yes, just as we prepare to wrap things up, is there anything that we haven't touched on specifically that you just want people to take away from this conversation, or just the book in general if they haven't had a chance to read it yet?
If you haven't had a chance to read it or get it, please do so. As Black authors, as Black women writers, who are writing about faith and feminism, that matters. But more than that, and thank you for everybody who's purchased so far and for everyone who supports. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Read this book if you're ready to go on and acknowledge the journey that you've already been on. One that will deepen your relationship with God, your relationship with yourself, and your relationship with other Black women. And will give you the room to ask different kinds of questions and to seek different kinds of answers. And go and read this book if you're ready to really and truly know that you're not alone in that process, because it's a lot of us red lip sisters out here waiting to go on this journey with you.
Absolutely. Absolutely. As I mentioned before, I will reiterate, this is a book that I read and I felt seen, because so many of the things that you talked about, either I've experienced or, something still working on or working through, and all of that, like for you losing your mom, for me, my mom is still here, but I lost my dad a few years ago, and he and I were like thick as thieves. So just the things of grieving and, pivoting when you've had someone who's been such an important part of your life and they're not there any longer. So, I mean, I can definitely relate to you, and we are going to get together and do a face-to-face.
I would love that.
Plus, I know that you bake, and I want some sweets.
Come to the house.
So, just once again, Candice, thank you so much for being here. I appreciate you. I love the work that you're doing. I'm going to continue to follow you and support you and the things that you're doing in any way that I can. And everyone here, if you look at the bottom, you can see that all of her information has been scrolling. You got the name of the book. She has one behind her. Here's my copy. Yes, it's over there. It's on the other side.
It's over there. Yeah, it's over there.
Right, it's over there. But yes, please, support and, have conversations. As she mentioned, tag her if you got something to say, let her know, send her an email, whatever it is that you need to do to, support this sister. And, we can continue to have these conversations. So as you said it before, we can all get free. Just be free. Yeah, be free. And as the name of this show is, live well, sister. Be free and live well.
Live and live well.
Be free and live well. Oh, someone is Ricky. You need a contract with Sephora or MAC or Ulta for all these makeup products.
I do. I agree.
We're going to put that out there into the atmosphere.
Yes. I'll put that in the atmosphere.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So thank you, everyone, again for your time. Oh, one last thing real quickly. Next week, I'm going to shift gears just a little bit. Let me find the right thing here. Next week, my guest will actually be my esthetician. Because as I mentioned, it's all about living well. So yes, next week it'll be Barbara Clayton of More Than a Pretty Face Skincare Boutique. She will be here to talk to us about how we can take care of our skin, because that is part of living well and making sure that our largest organ, which is our skin, is taken care of properly. And actually that fits in with your book and about the makeup and skincare and all that.
I was like, I need to know her.
Yes. Well, I'll hang on when I come off here and I will share some information, because since we're local. So, all right then. Well, everyone, you have a good evening, or if you're catching this on the replay, please let us know. Drop some comments, follow Candice, continue to join me here each Thursday at 8:00 p.m. And I look to see you again real soon. Y'all have a good one.
Thank you.
Bye-bye. Hold on one second. You hang on. I'm going to put up something real quick. See, this is the thing when you do your own show, you got to do everything.
Right. We think we still live.
Yeah, we're coming off though.
Okay.